The sitting is resumed. Senator Durant, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to give my support as well to the estimates debate 2018 to 2019 laid here in the Senate. Let me first begin by thanking God for sparing the life of our leader of government business here in the Senate. You know, from that vicious robbery a few days ago. We want our dear Senator Maxine to know we wish her a speedy recovery from that traumatic incident. And of course, we know that the angel of the Lord encamps round about them that fears him, and he delivers them. So we are thankful to God for his sparing her life, especially knowing that in that same place, someone lost their life some months ago. The Bible do say that he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. So we wish in our beloved leader of the Senate God's healing, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, physically, as well as spiritually, as she will recover indeed. And we condemn all forms of violence and crime. I know our Senator Ewing had this experience some years ago as well. So two ladies on this side, you know, experienced that. We hope that no more will experience such. Now, historians will have to record that something of great significance was birthed in 2017 when the social partnership in this island, namely the government, the private sector, and the labor organizations came together and committed themselves to consistent, meaningful dialogue to produce a document called the Barbados Sustainable Recovery Plan 2018. Madam President, this seems to be a sustainable recovery plan that was conscientiously put together to bring this island on a path of sustained growth, of course, increased productivity, consistent progress, economic recovery, and prosperity through innovative, creative, and technological advancement. So I think it's a great plan that is within this manual, and my prayer is that all that is anticipated will be realized. So I certainly commend the social partnership on this new beginning and the spirit of togetherness that is being demonstrated. Jesus himself said in Matthew 18 that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything they ask, it will be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. For where the twos and threes are gathered together, there am I in the midst of them. And of course, there were more than 2 and 3 gathered together to put their collective skills and academia together, knowledge and experience and professionalism to bring forth this framework before us, and we are trusting God will guide and God will lead. It says in Psalms 127:1, very familiar verse, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who builds it. Unless the Lord guards the city, like the island Barbados, our nation that we love, the watchman stays awake, but in vain. We will continue to trust the guidance of God in all we do. May the blessings of Almighty God rest upon these plans and projections within this framework, and may the wisdom of God and his divine guidance lead to the sustainable recovery and economic prosperity anticipated in the few years ahead. I'm appealing for all hands to be on deck in a united, bipartisan approach, to our island's economic recovery. I trust that that level of togetherness, that will bring that strength, will bring that level of security and peace as we go forward together. Because the truth is, we are in this together. And we are seeking to strengthen the foundation of our nation for our children and our grandchildren, who will have to live here while we are gone. We want to leave a strong foundation for them to build upon. And we have found one from our parents and foreparents. I think it's only fair that we should leave something even stronger than what we have found, because it should go from glory to glory, or from strength to strength as we go on. I want also to give my support to the current estimates of expenditure. I know that these expenditures, estimates of expenditure, would have been craftily laid out with the government's commitment to implement socially balanced policies in every sector of our dear island, to encourage economically viable developmental programs as well within Barbados for the good of the land, to promote environmentally sound practices nationwide, to maintain genuine, honest, transparent governance, and to present Barbados as not only an economy, Madam President, but also a well-balanced society where equity, truth, and industry are upheld to the highest standard by all and sundry. As a small island developing state, of course, we know that Barbados is highly susceptible to the socio-economic bombardment that links us inextricably to the development and to all that is happening in this volatile global environment in which we live. We are not exempt, or we're not immune, we're not somewhere put on Mars. We are part of the global hostile environment that is being experienced by so many nations, including Greece, Venezuela, Trinidad, and so many others within recent years. But thanks be unto God, we are still able to hold our heads above the water as a nation, and still able to punch our way through the turbulent tide. And of course, this is not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, as we depend on God. For example, Madam President, history will record that we survived during 2017, the worst hurricane season ever to hit the Caribbean islands. And yet, we managed to remain unscathed, unlike some of our northern Caribbean islands that experience severe destruction and economic loss, to whom our hearts continue to go out as they seek to rebuild and to recover and to really get their lives back together. And in saying that, I must say that we have been able as an island to accomplish so much with so very little over the years, and continue to do so even in the midst of these difficult times. Now, we have seen recently the frequency of interpersonal violence in our schools, and that has become a concern which requires urgent attention, and I know that that is being looked at by several factions in our society. Because it is not an issue which can be explained in a simplistic way, but one which is informed by the complex intertwining of all the psychosocial elements governing human existence. So we need to really put our heads together and prayerfully look at ways and means of how we can help. I believe that we have dropped the ball somewhere, because the question is, how did we get here? How our children have become so violent, even within the school environment, even in the presence of teachers, and even to teachers as well. Indeed, what is occurring in our schools is a mirror of what has been manifested on a wider scale in our homes and in our communities, and we've seen it playing out in the lives of our children, because children do what they see, and the diet that they are taking in day after day is what they will manifest. As a matter of fact, research suggests that among the factors influencing violence among the youth are some of the following that I will just mention, just a few. One, exposure to violence. And yes, some children are exposed to this even in their homes, their mother and father and other relatives. A feeling also of personal victimization, and this can create frustration within a child, feeling victimized. Feelings of depression, neglect, and abandonment. Also, mental illnesses among some of our children can cause that level of depression to step in, and then, of course, it will show in their behavior. A sense of their basic needs not being met is also another factor that researchers said is responsible for some of the behavior we see displayed in our children. Poor diet, some being hungry, especially in our secondary schools, because of the carelessness or neglect of the parent or a single mother, maybe to put things there in place. And some may be on the borderline of poverty and experiencing that difficulty. Of course, a hungry man is an angry man. The influence of violence also in the media, and so much of the media coverage, the things that they will have on their ears and their little tablets and video games and so forth are mostly very violent games, mostly killing. So they're being fed that because the technology is given to them to keep their company and to for them to enjoy, or what the parents think is some level of enjoyment and entertainment, but it's feeding them a diet of violence. Poor parenting, of course, irresponsible parenting is something that's very prevalent today, and we wish that this can be improved by all means, by maybe through television programming, town hall meetings, and other forms of activities of helping parents to understand their role and not to abdicate their responsibility and leave their responsibility to school teachers and principals and the church and other people to do, but the parent has to train up the child in the way he shall go, so when he's old he will not depart from it. Also, negative influence in the neighborhood, the block culture, and other negative activities that are taking place. And some negative activities right in the home as well. You know, I travel a bit around, and some time ago I was in a setting, in a funeral. I don't have to say where, but in a funeral, and the son of the deceased came up to speak, to give the eulogy on behalf of his mother. And the first thing he said, you know, is that, and he's just about 20 or so, 20, 21, young boy. But the first thing he came up and said, my mother is a prostitute, or was a prostitute. And he said that very clearly to the entire place where I was, church, where I was. And one of the things that he went on to mention as a young boy that really stuck with me is that his mother came home many times crying because the men took advantage of her and then took back the money, all right? And instead of going home with money, she went home with nothing, crying, and he, as a young boy, he saw all of this, he said, in the eulogy, and he came to the place where he decided he is going to be his mother's manager, you know? And he went out to be, you know what you call that, right? And that really hit me as I listened, you know? So he said he became his mother's manager. So in other words, he was getting his example from the home, from his very mother. And she allowed him to do that. All right, so negative influences, not only in the community or on the blocks, but sometimes, sadly, it can be right from the home. So we really need to strengthen the parental care, in our nation by teaching parents, mothers, and fathers to be good mothers, good fathers, good parents, to their children. And especially where we have been brought up, where we were well trained and we were well disciplined and so forth, and we were taught to be mannerly and respectful, and proper values were laid in our lives. Then I think it's only fair for us to pass on those good virtues and those good characteristics that we were able to inculcate in our lives to our children, so that they too can really develop very well-rounded individuals in life. Any approach to this problem, though, Madam President, requires a multi-dimensional approach involving the home, involving the school, the church, the media, and every sector which has any modicum of social influence. I note with care, just night before, I think on a program I see on TV, People's Business, where the chief education officer asked for churches to pray. And that touched me in a very deep way, because she asked for churches and asked all denominations, regardless of the denomination, to pray for the children of our nation. And I want to appeal to our pastors out there. We've been doing it before, we've already been doing it. But even now, with this call coming from, from the chief education officer coming nationally, as it were, because it was on television, as that call came to us nationally, then I think we should even intensify our efforts to not only pray, but to also trust the Lord for his action plan and for the strategy that we need to be able to do some very positive things that will help influence and change the lives of our young people. Let's champion the cause and appealing to pastors and churches to honor that. Since this generation was born into the technological age, I think technology should be one of the major tools used in combating school violence. For example, it would be important for the teachers to, on WhatsApp chats, to be in touch with parents, whether they use Facebook or the WhatsApp, our website, where they can connect with the parents easily, and the parents can know what's happening. The teachers can be really in touch with, sharing with the parents what is happening with their children. Use the technology wisely, since a lot of children spend time on technology anyhow. So it should be utilized in connecting the home and the school, thus giving the parents a deeper sense of partnership in their children's activity within the school environment. And I think that is a very useful thing. Parents who fail to cooperate with the school, especially where this becomes an impediment to the work and guidance, counselors and social workers and the principal and teachers, parents who fail to cooperate, then I think they should be held accountable. I will also want to put in here that I think more robust security guards should be placed at our schools, especially more males who will be able to stand up and help in any skirmish, because most teachers seems to be warned not to part or not to get into any parting of fights and so forth, because they're afraid of for their own lives and for any injury. So they may not want to participate. But if you have good, strong security guards around, then they may be able to intervene and help curb some of this violence. Now, what is important and what I have noted, and I want to say I think should be changed, is that the contract for security guards at the school is for them to protect the plant and not the personnel. All right? To protect the plant and not the personnel. But I think that the personnel, the teachers and principals, and they need protection as well. All right, so apart from the plant itself, the building, the grounds, the furniture, the windows, doors, and chairs and benches and so forth being protected, I think also the personnel needs that level of protection. So teachers are very important for the education of our children. Now, between November to January, we had some incidents, and my prayer is that we will be able to see this reduced considerably for the rest of the year. We hope we wouldn't see a repeat of what we have seen within the last few months. From November 6th, November 6, 2017, two 15-year-old schoolboys were stabbed on a school bus in Seaview, St. James. On November 22nd, 17-year-old student at Ellerslie School, chopped, he lost a finger, was partially severed, and he received also, one of his fingers was partially severed as well as one was lost. He received also chop marks around his body. January 31st, 4 students were also injured in a stabbing incident on a transport board bus somewhere in St. James, around Paynes Bay. February 6th, another 15-year-old boy stabbed during an altercation with another at one of our schools. 12-year-old girl was hit at the same time with a missile, of course, a big rock. And then on February 12th, 2 students were stabbed, and this was just recently. Another one of our schools in an altercation. And if you remember, a young lady, I think her hair was set on fire recently by a bus pole. You know, so we have the problem on our hand, and I think that with the intervention and the teachers, the parents, the church, media, and all other interested stakeholders who have some modicum of social influence within our society coming together, this should be able to be reduced. And that's my hope. But I said that I must balance it with the positive, because all is not lost. You know, and we think we heard that already. There are positive things happening with our young people. You know, some of them are out there doing their best, as we heard. Senator Haynes said, Lady Haynes said yesterday, as well as Senator Sanford Garner said earlier. So yes, young people, for example, last year, 26 students from various secondary schools received Barbados Scholarship Awards, and 19 received exhibitions. Most of our young people are doing an excellent job in their educational pursuits. Many are excelling in their sports, as Senator Lady Haynes said yesterday. You know, so it's only a minority are delinquent. So let's not paint all the children with the same brush, because most of our young people are really upright, holding themselves together, doing their best academically. Those who are in skills training are doing their best in a professional way, and we want to continue to give them our support. And yes, there are few that will be delinquent, and that will happen in any nation. That's why I applaud the Ministry of Education's initiative on the positive behavior management program that they are bringing on stream. As a matter of fact, that's one of the major objectives for the secondary schools during the 2018-2019 financial year. And they said one of the objectives is to develop plans and facilitate training opportunities for principals and staff in developing effective schools as part of the school's positive behavior management program, teachers' evaluation, and also healthy life initiatives. Secondly, to identify alternative counseling support assistance for severely at-risk secondary school students by the end of 2018-2019. So at least things are being put in place to assist in this area of behavioral management, help you with anger issues and so forth. And one of the things that we see, there are a lot of sixth forms being added to some of our secondary schools. It therefore means the mere fact that sixth forms are being added is an indication that some students, many students are excelling and doing very well in their academic career and are therefore given the opportunity to remain in school longer with the sixth forms being added. So I really am thankful. I am appealing to parents to please send your children back to the house of God. You take God out of their lives, then you leave them to go down a path of destruction, a path of no return. I'm appealing to parents to send your children back to the house of God. Send them back to church, where they can be taught and encouraged in the word of God. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he shall go, and when he is old, he or she is old, they will not depart from it. We need to get our children back into the house of God. Also in Deuteronomy 6 and verse 7 says, and these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall carefully teach them to your sons, your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your home, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. So the culture is being encouraged here to be created where the word of God is given priority, where values and those very important things that can help build your life and edify you and help you to be more rounded and respectful and mannerly, you know, where those things can be taught. And the church is the place, as well as in your home, can also be the place where those values are passed on. But I'm thankful that most of our young people are really excelling and doing their best. And the few delinquent ones, then we can continue to help them so that we will reduce the incidence of violence and that kind of criminal activity. I think maybe searching, random searches rather in schools is important, and I think that's something that the Ministry of Education may need to be looking at because too many weapons are being seen, you know, either around the school or entering the school. And one of the things I would ask principals and teachers and staff members of schools to make sure is to make sure the compound is cleared of anything that can become a weapon. You know, I remember one young person told a teacher, but ma'am, I don't have to bring school no weapon. If I need one, I can find one right on the compound. I know where to go, I know where to search, I know where to go and find it, you know. So I would think that it would be important for principals and school teachers as well as parent teachers join in making sure the compound is cleared of anything that can be used as a weapon if a child, in the spur of the moment, just turn and put his hand on something that he knows where to find it and use it on another student. In that spur of the moment, then he will regret after. So let's take it up. Prevention is better than cure. In the area of tourism, I really appreciate what Senator Sanford Garner said earlier about more attractions are needed for our tourists. And yes, I've been saying this all along the while myself, because we are short on that, but I think that we can improve on that, as she just mentioned. One of the things I would like us to do here, I think I mentioned this a few years ago, I would still like to see a space and aviation museum, you know, here in Barbados on an acre or two of land, you know, where we can assemble retired passenger aircrafts that used to visit Barbados or land at Sewell or Grantley Adams years ago. Fighter jets that are retired, have a fighter jet or two, a helicopter gunship, a tank, TriStar. You haven't seen the TriStar for a long time. Most of them are out of circulation now, just a few around armored vehicle, and certain things that we see the military is retired and passenger aircrafts that are retired. And if we can have quite a number of them on an acre of land, surrounded, of course, by a wall, I know that there are tourists that will be attracted to such sites, you know, and it will also create an environment where entrepreneurs and business people can set up shops and so forth around, and restaurants and so forth. And I mean, doors of opportunities, many doors of opportunities can be created as such a facility is raised up here in Barbados. And I'm sure that that can bring in quite a lot of money over time, and will be attraction for local people as well, because Barbadians like to see inside aircrafts and have those things explained and so forth to them. We'll have a competent staff trained to just explain and show forth that level of educating those who are there to see such machinery. Now, under the National Assistance, or the Ministry of Social Care, rather, we have, Madam President, the IC Bridge program, which is doing very well in the midst of the difficult circumstances we are experiencing economically. What I applaud the government for, that in spite of the economic constraints we have, yet they have never removed that social net. But they have maintained it where people who are under that, at that poverty line, those underprivileged, those who are poor, can be reached. The IC Bridge program is about empowerment of members of the poor and vulnerable households in our Barbadian landscape. Members of these households do not have the necessary tools to manage those risks and to overcome their living conditions of poverty. So government has stepped in and has taken this program on, and they're helping. There are 30 households that are helped at a time, 30 households that that intervention, the poorest of the poor, of course, from various constituencies, and they are given someone to work with them, an officer or officers are working with them, and counselors and so forth. And these individuals are met now. The IC Bridge program really is a program designed to really not just give handouts, but a program more designed to give a hands up, so you can lift a person from that dependency syndrome. Because I've realized that there's continued existence of intergenerational poverty once it is encouraged. It continues and continues. People living under poverty are the most vulnerable to changes in their environment. They're the most vulnerable. All right, and this thing called learned helplessness leads to dependency, which is a characteristic of the poor. And we have to bring people, wean people out of that learned helplessness syndrome or dependency, right? Because it only leads to more poverty. We try to help people. We give them a line and teach them to fish so that they can help themselves after. Because when the handout is given and that's finished, then they're looking for another handout. And we cannot train people in that way. Some individuals also, another challenge that's facing those who are really underprivileged and in that poor bracket, some of them lack knowledge on how to access the social services that are being provided. So things are there, things are provided, provisions being made, but they do not know how to access those things. So they really need that intervention. And that is being done with the IC Bridge programs. Because what they're realizing that short-term responses are given by the agencies, but then that's just short-term. and the person is back to square one after a little while. But the IC Bridge is now also joined by the acronym IC actually, ISEE. One, I is for identification, where the poor and vulnerable are identified and their needs are assessed. That's identification. And this approach is so biblical. All right, the first S is stabilization. The immediate needs are addressed in that person's life. All right, that's stabilization. Then the first E is enablement. In other words, you're giving them skills to survive, are imparted. So you're teaching them skills and you're giving them tools to work with so that they will be able to stand on their own 2 feet. That's enabling them. And the second E is empowerment, where individuals are imbued with the capacity to succeed and excel in this society. They are wired for success. They are wired to cope with the challenges they're facing in the society. And that's the purpose of the program, to help them. The bridge is a gateway to social inclusion and integration of these individuals into the community. It also helps and form and act like a conduit for individuals to take up opportunities that are being offered in the wider society, building a road or individual development towards the goal of empowerment. And I think that is a very, very interesting program, and it has helped. The first batch of 30 households came through that 2-year program, and in 2014, they graduated. Homes were done. In some cases, homes were built as well. It depends on the need that was present. They were helped in their education. They were helped in the area of HR development. Those who needed help in the 11+ exams were given the necessary help. All right. Course and exam fees were paid as well for those who were doing other exams outside of the school system. Then there were additional lessons given for CXC as well to those families under the IC Bridge program. Adults who also came within the household who were interested in furthering their studies. Some of them came and were trained, and they gained grade 1 and 2s in their passes. Some found temporary and some found permanent jobs because they were given assistance in writing CVs and applications, and they were successful in either finding a temporary job or a permanent job. So the IC Bridge program is really lifting households from the state of poverty and bringing them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and to be able to build their lives. An opportunity they would have never had hadn't it been for the intervention of the IC Bridge program. And now also we are having the Strengthening Human and Social Development in Barbados, which now is another initiative just like the IC Bridge, but this is through the Inter-American Development Bank that has come on board along with the China financing company that has given a loan of 10 million US to help in this area. These a further 250 individuals, 250 households rather, will benefit now from the new initiative of the coming together of the bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the loan from the China Co-Financing Fund, for Latin America and the Caribbean. That loan of 10 million US dollars, this will increase from catering just for 30 households to 250 more households. That will be a total of 280 households will be catered for now in the new initiative that has come on board alongside the IC Bridge program. So 30 families were catered for on 3 occasions because they have entered the 3rd batch of 30 families under the IC Bridge. And now the 250 households will be coming on board now with this new loan, and that one is under the strengthening the family. And of course, so far we have 103 households that have already been identified and are being helped. And just all the things I mentioned earlier, these things are being meted out to these individuals as well. Help with their exams, help with 11 plus, help with courses that they are taking. Also, they are given, each family is given a debit card, and that debit card, $100 is placed on that debit card every month. And that is for basic necessities in that poor family. That is to acquire basic necessities. And that is costing the government $36,000 per year, you know, among the families. But overall, the families so far have been given $100,000 among all the households, and this helped them to access benefits like national assistance grants, child support, funeral assistance, food, uniform, and furniture vouchers. All these things are being provided. They're getting help in these areas. So those poor families that were identified and are helped, when you see some of them, you're so happy that now they are being helped. Then you look at them first in the first condition, now see them after being helped, and that intervention by government, you're seeing a different individual, well-rounded, they are learning, and the bills are being met, they're not hungry anymore, food and those things are being provided, and it's so good. Jesus said, as much as you do it unto one of the least of these, you do it unto me. So it's great when a nation, in spite of economic difficulties, sometimes the first thing to go is the social aspect, or any money going towards social care. That's the first thing to cut. No, but this government has maintained the social fabric of that network, so that people who are on the poverty line or who may have been plunged more because of the austerity or the economic situation are being assisted and being lifted up. Housing also is being catered for in this program as well. Presently, as I speak, 4 houses are being constructed, and another 8 are before tongue and planning for approval. And when approval is given, those 8 will also join the 4, and will be 12 that will be in construction. And 12 households or families will be able to have their home. Lancaster House, we spent money on renovating that house, and we got a bit of help from the Chinese government. But Lancaster House was renovated, and of course, since that has been renovated and retrofitted, those who met with a catastrophe or a tragedy, whether it was fire, flood, or eviction. I know we took a man in St. Philip, we took him from under a dump street, a rat-infested area, and a car that was rat-infested where he was sleeping, and cuts on his hands were exposed, and we were afraid of leptospirosis. We took him out of that situation, you know, and we were able to put him in one of our homes. And Lancaster House serves like this, where we're able to rescue people from squalor, dilapidated conditions, and place them in Lancaster House. So we spent some money on that, and that's money that was well spent, you know. And Lancaster House is fully occupied, and a family that had a fire and lost everything, with the help of the National Assistance Board and the Welfare Department, that family was restored, the furniture, dining set, fridge, stove, you name it, even clothing and food stuff, and basic necessities were given to them. They were placed at Lancaster House. And not only that, but the house was now just completed with the help of the Urban Development, UDC, and the Poverty Alleviation Reduction Program under the Ministry of Social Care, Constituency Empowerment, and Community Development. That house is now completed, and that family now is relocated in a new home, you know, after being burnt out by fire and losing everything. So the ministry and the National Assistance Board is actively out there being a source of help, bringing hope, you know, bringing that level of restoration in lives. And we are thankful for the competent staff that we have, that have that compassion and that love to meet these particular needs that are existing among us. And there are many, because we are living in such a society. Now, when it comes to the care of the elderly, that's a thing that the National Assistance Board is really strong on maintaining. As a matter of fact, Psalms 71 verse 9 says, "Do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone." And that verse keeps me connected to the elderly in our nation. Because I believe we must be a voice for the voiceless. We must be their hands and their feet to help them, especially when they are frail and weak and being taken advantage of, especially when those who are getting a good pension and cannot handle it properly are being abused and their pensions taken and nothing is given to them in return. Those things hurt. They hurt. And I meet with that on so many occasions that it just burns your heart. And I'm hoping, as we continue, and why I quote that verse is because I want to remind the elderly in this nation that the National Assistance Board and its staff under the Ministry of Social Care, Constituency Empowerment, and Community Development will never cast them away or forsake them. And that's what the scripture admonishes us in Psalms 71 and verse 9. As such, we have the National Assistance Board Senior Recreational Activities Program that is doing very well. Just recently, the National Assistance Board celebrated 28 years of the existence of the Senior Recreational Activities Program with the opening of its 17th center, and that's catering for about 410 elderly citizens who were actively involved in making things, doing craft, line dancing. They're so involved in activities that stimulates them, really enlightens them, and brings them into fellowship and living as a community. And also they're benefiting from things where their craft will be able to be sold and they'll be able to gain monies now in their hands for the work they do, right? It is the intention of the National Assistance Board also to open an additional center during 2018, during this year. So we have 17 now, and it's our intention to open an 18th one, so that in 2018 we will have 18. We want to cater for about 530 elderly citizens, you know, when we have completed all of the centers. Currently in Barbados, Madam President, there are 35,969 persons over the age of 65, out of this small population of 277,000 to 280,000. You know, as a society, we continue to age, right? And the National Assistance Board remains committed to providing a range of programs and services aimed at improving and maintaining the social functioning, also the independence, the health, the wellness, you know, of our elderly population, over almost 36,000 over the age of 65. Sadly, in saying that, I must say, sadly, while our population continues to age, our fertility rate is on the decline. Thank you, Madam President. Our fertility rate is on the decline. I wasn't there to say any more about that. I said something about that, sometimes was almost crucified. But we need to really improve our fertility rate. But with the increase of our elderly population, housing, emergency housing is becoming a problem. So the National Assistance Board recognizes that the elderly face this challenge. I have been to homes where you wouldn't put a dog in, and there an elderly person is either sitting or laying down in a bed or sitting in a chair. Your heart bleeds because you know you can't leave them there in that condition. You have to scratch your head and make sure you find somewhere to put that elderly person. And what I've discovered, sadly, is that some people, some family members, they know that the elderly is in squalor, is in a dilapidated condition, but they refuse to call us about that situation because they know that if they call us, an intervention will be made and that person will be removed, and they feel that the checks will be stopped. So they will not be getting the check. So they want to hold on to the check. So they leave the person in squalor, leave them in a deplorable, unsanitary, unhygienic environment, just so they can keep getting the 2 checks that come every month. Remember being at one some time ago, recently, and I had to pull them up the same day out of the house. Couldn't leave them in that house. The deplorable condition of that place. And you know what's the first thing the person was supposed to be looking after, old person asked me, oh, will the check still come? I said, no, it will not. But that's the first question that was asked, because that seems to be the priority, you know. This is not fair to our elderly. So we will continue under the National Assistance Board to make sure we make interventions as long as we know about it. That's why I'm saying to persons, make sure you talk. Call us. Don't sit back. Just call us. Once we are told, then we will make an intervention and we'll try to make things better for that elderly person. That is the reason why we need to have an emergency shelter for the elderly, emergency housing shelter. And I'm asking for an acre of land, at least, which will be hopefully donated by the government. And we're looking to put some transitional housing program in place on donated land, of course, that will allow the board to build at least 10, they'll have at least 10 2-bedroom buildings donated, you know, on that acre of land. It will be manned, of course, by National Assistance Board staff, you know, and counselors and social workers and welfare officers and wardens, you know, and it will be there for emergency purposes, where if we come into a situation where an elderly is in a deplorable situation like some that we have seen already, that we had to make immediate intervention. We could not leave them where we found them. Then we will have somewhere, we have 10 buildings at least that are there that we can revert them to. So that emergency shelter for the elderly is something we want to see come on board very soon. So the Board of Management will present a draft to the Minister very, very soon. You know, the Minister of Social Care, Constituency Empowerment, and Community Development, Honorable Steve Blackett, who will then, of course, look it over, and after consultation with the relevant authorities will take it to Cabinet, but we're hoping that that is something that will be realized where we can have that emergency shelter for the elderly, you know, on the cards, and where many of our elderly, some did not plan for old age perhaps, did not plan well, some met with unfortunate situations, some were robbed, but there were reasons for reasons untold to us. We don't know. Some we may hear of later, why they are in that kind of squalor, in that kind of situation. But that's not important. And when we go to help someone, we're not interested where that person is or what party that person is, because that's not the important thing. That's not even in our imagination. It's a citizen of this country, and that citizen needs help. And that is what is important, and we will want to make sure we give that help whenever we could. The Clyde Gollop shelter is there, and of course there are 34 men. That's to the maximum right now. 34 men are in there every night. We are trying to create a day program now as well, where they will not have to go out in the morning. Right now, that was developed as a night shelter. So they come in 6:30 or 7 in the evening, and then they will leave in the morning about 7. And the place is then locked up until the next evening. We are trying to change that dynamic, where we are bringing programs on stream where they can remain there during the day, and skills and educational programs and other activities will be in place, where if right now it's open on Sundays and on holidays, and if rain is falling a morning, we're making it possible where they don't have to go out in the rain, they can remain there. So we're trying to make that comfortable for those 34, but of course we need more. And it seems as if we need a place for women now as well, and that came to mind especially when this unfortunate situation with this lady that just passed away. I received that information that afternoon, and then that same evening, before I could have get to her, that lady was killed, and that really hurt me. I told the person, I'm sorry you didn't get to me before. If I had got this a day before, I may have met her the day before she died, and that may have been averted. At the National Citizens Board, we are thankful we were able to appoint 93 workers. Over the last year and a half, 93 workers were appointed who were working for over more than 10 years or more, and we want to really have a competent staff, and we want to be able to see that level of commitment. Therefore, we're doing all that we could to make sure the workers are comfortable so they can do their work in caring for the elderly and the vulnerable in our society, as well as the homeless, at the Clyde Gollop shelter. And then at the George Donner Center, that center that was renovated in September 2015 it was completed, but it was opened in 2015 of December, and that is filled to the maximum right now. We have people on the list. So we need more additional homes that we can retrofit or renovate to be elderly daycare centers, because records and research shows that families, elderly staying with their families, live much longer. So we want them to have the opportunity, and churches, of course, I will appeal. I know Senator Fraser often speak about that, more churches opening up to have elderly daycare centers, which I agree with. And we had another church just did that a month ago or so. And I know that other churches will want to come on board, including us as well. And we are giving our best to make sure that our people, our elderly people, are taken care of where they can age with grace and dignity. It is my intention to see this carried out, and I am thankful for the opportunity of being able to share these few thoughts with us, and all the monies that are allocated to the Ministry of Social Care, Constituency Empowerment, and Community Development is allocated to the National Assistance Board with all its various aspects of work that we have to do for the elderly, for the homeless, is much appreciated, and I give my support to these estimates of expenditure, 2018, 2019, and may God continue to bless this nation, and may God continue to bless the workers who are giving of their best to help that vulnerable group within our society. Thank you, Madam President.